Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the UnHolier Podcast. Today, I will be talking to Jessica, and Jessica is a survivor of two TTI homes, actually, Happiness Hill and Shenandoah Haven. And I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. I know that the subject matter is pretty heavy when we're talking about the troubled teen industry, but she's a survivor and she wanted to tell her story, and I really hope that you guys take a listen. And at the end, we really talk about how we can help other survivors in the TTI, and also a word for parents who might have a difficult teenager at home. So I hope you all enjoy this episode, and thank you so much for listening. Welcome, Jessica, to the podcast. It's so good to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So if you wouldn't mind just giving our listeners and viewers just a little bit of background as to who you are and maybe what troubled teen home you ended up in and how old you were when you ended up in those homes.
I'm an only child. I was 14 years old. My dad was active military, and my mom got involved heavily into a church because they came around her while my dad was military. Like I said, I was 14, and I got mad at my mom and got one of my dad's beers and drank it, or took a sip of it. She went and told the pastor. The pastor said she's getting kicked out of the Christian school, or you can send her to Happiness Hill. The church supported Happiness Hill in Union, Mississippi at the time. So within a week, I was in Union, Mississippi at a home for having one sip of beer, pretty naive, and just surrounded by these insane, crazy rules that I had never experienced in my home life.
Okay, so first of all, I know that it's pretty common that kids that end up in these TTI homes, a lot of them are adopted. Were you adopted or were you a biological daughter?
No, ma'am, I'm a biological daughter.
Okay, so that's interesting. And it's interesting that they preyed on your mom while your dad was away. So she was sort of single mom in it for a while, and they sort of took advantage of that. And yeah, that's interesting that she would be okay sending her only child away.
In the Christian school, the worst thing that could happen would be for you to go to public school and get a real education, because my education is very lacking. So she was horrified for me to go into the public school system.
Wow.
Because basically I would have been a lost cause. I would have gotten drugs and drinking, and the academics wouldn't have transferred over, because the academics was so much better at the Christian school. Because I've heard a lot of people talk about ACE. That's what we did. And it's really not schooling at all.
Right. And those are the little packets that you basically go through on your own, and you might have somebody grade them or you might grade them yourself.
We graded them ourselves, and we did ACE in every school that I was in, the Christian school there in Alabama, where I say I'm from, then Happiness Hill in Union, Mississippi. And then after Happiness Hill, I went to Shenandoah Haven in Cleveland, Tennessee. And we also did ACE there. So pretty much from the time I was 12 to 18, I did the ACE program.
Now, did you find out later on that your diploma wasn't worth anything, or?
So I've graduated high school twice. I graduated in 2003 from what we thought was an accredited school, because they specifically told my father they were. And then I graduated again in 2013. I went to try to get into college and realized that my diploma was not worth the paper that it was on.
Right. And I hear that from a lot of TTI survivors. It is just crazy to me that a lot of these homes, these places that they put these troubled teens, and one of the girls that I talked to, I don't know if you know Tabitha from Surviving Unrestrained, Survivors Unrestrained. Okay. So she was a troubled teen as well, and she went to Tranquility Bay. And, she's like, I hate the term troubled teen because we weren't troubled, we were traumatized. And I think that's a little bit more accurate to say traumatized teen because maybe you might have been, acting out. I don't even see that as acting out. You were just curious, you were a teenager, right? But maybe you were acting out because you were upset your dad was gone and you and your mom were just doing it on your own, and that's totally normal for a teenager to be like that. I mean, I think it's crazy that these parents just send their kid or kids off to these homes like, hey, you raise my kid, you whip them into shape, and then the repercussions of that further down the road are just horrific. I mean, the trauma and the psychological damage and sometimes physical damage that has happened to these people is just crazy. It's so crazy that the parents wouldn't just like find a good therapist and have a family therapy session or a few family therapy sessions where we're able to sit down and be like, okay, how can we help you? What is going on? Like, we want to be here for you and actually parent and do the hard things. But they're just like, yep, send them away.
I think a lot of it has to do with the independent fundamental Baptist culture
I do
because
too.
my mom was doing what she thought would save my soul. It was life and death to my mom because of the independent fundamental Baptist culture. And my mom was preyed on by the IFB when dad was in Saudi in 1991.
Mm.
And my parents to this day, especially my mother, will apologize and cry. And they really didn't have an idea of the extreme abuse that was going on at Happiness Hill or the Haven.
Sure, because they're going on the pastor's word. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that unfortunately these people in the church, they don't question anything that the pastor suggests or tells them to do. They just look at him as the man of God. And it's like, oh, you think I should send my kid? Okay, I'm going to trust you. This must be a good place if the pastor's recommending it. When the pastor might not even know how bad it is, but still, the parents should do some research. Unfortunately, they don't 9 times out of 10.
They don't. And my mom was put down so bad by the IFB because she had her own struggles with addiction that
Hmm.
she felt like she was not a good enough parent to be raising me.
Oh.
So when this happened, she blamed herself and was trying to save my soul
Hmm.
because my mom's story is one of a lot of addiction, a lot of heartache, and a lot of pain. So I see my mom as a victim also. And
Oh,
I'm not
sure.
trying to excuse the behavior of not being a parent. Like they have taken responsibility for the fact that they didn't check into things. They had a girl who ran away who contacted them and they didn't believe them.
Oh, yeah. We've heard of other situations like that. And that's the sad thing, is that so many of these victims and survivors are not believed because these people have this ideology or this paradigm of the people that work in these homes, and people such as like Lester Roloff, for instance, in the IFB.
Yeah.
The guy is idolized. He was a horrible individual. And
Hmm.
we have hundreds of stories to corroborate that fact. That statement is a fact. And there are still people in the IFB that think that man is like practically Apostle Paul. I mean, they think he was a wonderful Christian.
Yeah.
And it could not be further from the truth. And I don't know. I just think it's crazy that they just believe them and they don't ever question anything. And so you kind of can't totally blame the parents because they are blinded to that. Because again, I say this all the time, the IFB is a cult, and when you're in a cult, it is a type of cult. And when you're in a cult, you just blindly believe the leader. Like, you're not going to question it. You think that they are legitimate in every way, shape, and form. And so they are victims as well, like you said. Do you mind if I ask what church and or pastor it was that sent you away or had you sent away?
It was Victory Baptist Church in Jemison, Alabama. They call themselves a missionary Baptist church, but they operated as an IFB church, there was no oversight whatsoever. And anybody, pastors who came in were IFB. And, obviously Happiness Hill was supported by them. While their beliefs wasn't as extreme as these homes are, the religious abuse and some physical abuse was very much so still there.
Sure. Now, were you there while the Camerons were in charge, or was there somebody else?
It was the Palmers.
The
I was
Palmers. I'm
there.
sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
the
The
Palmers. Thank you.
Camerons, I think, were Lester Roloff.
Yes, they were. But there has been people who have done research, other TTI survivors who have actually dug into the Palmers, the Camerons, they are all connected.
That does not surprise me. Well, the Palmers ran from Lester Roloff's home with girls to start Happiness Hill when
Correct.
it was shut down in the early 90s. So, yeah, and then the Palmer's daughter was killed in the plane crash with the Roloffs.
Now, was she part of the Honeybee Quartet? I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay, she was part of okay. Yeah, which always puzzled me too. I'm like, they always make a big deal in the IFB about like boys and girls being like together and not having any, like, don't let your good be evil spoken of, or don't, if you're just in a room alone with a boy, like it looks bad. And same thing with like men and women, don't be in a room or by yourself with the opposite sex. They always say that. But then here you have Lester Roloff flying all his planes around everywhere with these women and young women. And where was his wife? His wife never went with him. Like, from the people I've talked to that were at the Rebecca home, they never, hardly ever saw his wife. She didn't come to the church services. She didn't hardly ever come out of the house, which I think is bizarre and is a whole nother episode in and of itself. But just that whole like culture, the IFB culture, is just really twisted and messed up.
Well, and you want to talk about twisted and messed up things. Hyles Anderson College. I went to Hyles Anderson straight out of high school because I believe the IFB. I went just full-fledged into it when I went to the Haven and went to Hyles Anderson. And in our courtyard was the wreckage of the plane that he died in.
You have got to be kidding me.
No, like I would have to dig back. I've got pictures of me standing in front of the plane wreckage that he died in, and it was in the middle of our courtyard at Hyles Anderson.
That is so morbid. And they really do put these men up on a pedestal like they are a god. They really, really do. And I know that they have like a bronze statue of Jack Hyles and his wife, which is so funny because isn't that one of the 10 commandments? Don't make any graven images. What are we doing, y'all? I don't know.
That's a whole different topic, Hyles Anderson.
Yeah,
honestly,
it is. So I'm sure you even have some like religious trauma from being at Hyles Anderson College. Like,
the big thing about being at Hyles Anderson was learning how to function in what I believe is a godly relationship. Now, not what I was taught is a godly relationship. I believe in a partnership, but it took me years to get the submissive 1950s house image out of my head because I would feel like I was failing my husband because I wasn't living up to what I was taught to be.
And you know what? And that's not even biblical. Like, I was just talking with somebody yesterday about this very thing, and that a lot of the IFB standards that they have, all this legalism, comes from really the cultural background when the IFB sort of started in the 40s and 50s.
With John Rice.
And they just kept those cultural standards of the, like you said, the 1950s housewife, where basically all you're good for is to be a wife and a mother, and your job is to cook and clean and serve your husband. And you can't have an outside job. You can't do anything entrepreneurial, nothing. Or else you're just a rebellious, woman, a Jezebel,
Yeah, you couldn't think for yourself,
Right.
especially with like voting. You were told who to vote for. You weren't allowed to form your own opinions. So, it goes down like to even outside rights we have as Americans that it was just oppressed, and the racism in the
Oh gosh, yeah.
IFB
Hmm.
was horrible. And
Yeah.
when I started deconstructing, that was one thing that I really realized, because I was raised in a racist home, but I was determined not to be racist.
Hmm.
Um, but when I started to deconstruct, I had to realize that there were things that I thought and would say that was actually racist, that was commonly used at Shenandoah Haven, especially. And I can't imagine how that made the African American women feel, because when I say racism, I'm not talking about towards any other culture. I'm talking about towards African Americans. And that
Yeah. Specific.
really, and I ended up marrying an African American man, and Mitchell Buck walked me down the aisle. He did not know until he showed up the day of the wedding that my future husband at that time was African American.
Oh wow. So
Um,
did he marry you?
he did. He walked me down the aisle because Mitchell Buck was like a father figure to me at the Haven, and I was out of the Haven 3 years at this point. So I had gotten I just felt like I was living in sin. That's the thing. I wasn't out of the IFB because I still had every IFB belief. I just felt like I was living in sin. So,
Why did you feel like you were living in sin?
honestly, because I was marrying someone of a different race, even though
Okay.
I felt like I loved them. We had had sexual relationships outside of the wedding vows, and we all know that that is, as you say, Jezebel in the IFB.
Sure. Yeah.
So literally, I felt like I was living in sin, but my heart was attached to this man. Now, he ended up being abusive, and a lot went
Oh my
into
God.
that, with how I was raised up in these homes, because his abuse was covered up by me trying to be submissive to him and worship him as a god, because that's what we were taught.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can totally relate to you on that level. I was in an abusive marriage as well with the son of an IFB evangelist. So
Okay.
I get that. And you're like, and I don't know if I'm assuming you're divorced now.
I am divorced and remarried.
Okay. Yes. Same.
I'm 40 and I got married at 21 at that
Okay,
point in
yeah,
time.
I got married at 22. So yeah, very similar there. But yeah, they even use the Bible. Like my ex would use the Bible to say, the Bible says you are not to defraud me. You have to submit to me, all these things that he would use against me. And it's like I just got to the point where I was just like, you know what? If I go to hell, so be it. I'm leaving this guy. I'm not doing this. I cannot live my life like this anymore. I just can't do it. And I left. And it's been the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made. But anyway, okay, let's get back to Happiness Hill. So
Yes.
you were there from what age to what age?
I was there. I went in November of 1999. I was 14. I left the second week of May of 2000.
Okay. So let's talk about your experience there. Was there Did you experience any abuse, or was it more like very, very strict rules and the girls sort of kept each other in check?
You know, oh my word, Happiness Hill was a mess. Here's the truth about my situation at Happiness Hill. I got close really quick with a dorm mom,
Mhm.
and I was protected from the abuse there. I saw a lot of abuse go on, and really bad abuse. They did have girls who would run after girls when they ran away, and those girls were taught basically to beat the other girls up. I was never a part of that team. It was very religious, very strict. It was under the law, basically. We couldn't eat like white flour or pig or bacon or anything like that. We couldn't talk without staff in the room. One of the punishments that I saw other girls go through was confinement, and they had to dress in these red skirts and these red checkered shirts and walk around. Well, when we were out in public, our chin had to be to our chest. But if you were on confinements, what it was called, you had to walk around the house that way. So my experience at Happiness Hill was more traumatic than abusive, I would say, because I was protected.
So you saw a lot of the abuse, but you were protected from most of it.
Exactly,
Okay.
which makes me feel guilty, honestly, because all of these girls went through this stuff. And like I said, I watched it. And I know that, you have had other girls on the podcast from Happiness Hill, and everything they say is absolutely true.
Yeah, and for those who are listening, if you have been listening to this podcast, you've listened to season 1, we're now on season 2. If you have been listening to this, some of these ladies have never even met each other. Like, you were there at a different time than Jana was there. And
Absolutely.
so you are saying the exact same things that Jana said on her episode. Like the chin to the chest, I forget, I thought there was like a term for if you had to wear the red.
Confinement.
Okay, I thought there was a word for the outfit, or maybe not. Maybe that.
It may be something that I've forgotten about,
Okay.
honestly. Like, that's
But like you even explaining the outfit in detail, she explained the same outfit. Like, how, if you're listening and you're still like, I don't believe this is happening, like what are you even thinking? People that haven't even met each other are corroborating the same story. They just were there at different times. This is happening, you all. And it's still happening, unfortunately. Some of these places are still open.
yeah.
So, okay, so you were there for a few years, and then what happened that then?
I was there only for 6 months at Happiness Hill.
Oh,
I went
okay.
from
Why did I think
November
you
of
were there from like
99 till
14 to?
May of 2000, because the
Okay.
other home I was in, I was there 3.5 years.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's, yeah. But
So
Happiness,
so why were you only there for 6 months?
so the Palmers were in their 70s, I believe, at the time.
Okay.
And they lost all their staff, and there was like 30 of us girls. Like, both dorm moms left because they could not handle it anymore. Handle what was going on, handling Miss Palmer's abuse, her controlling ways. So we realized that the Palmers couldn't control us. So individually, a few girls would get together, and you would start acting out. For example, the night I got kicked out, because before this time, getting kicked out of Happiness Hill was impossible. And so, but because they lost all the staff, they couldn't physically control us. I tried to break into the old dorm mom's room, and I did that to set the alarm off. I did not do it to get to the phone. I knew I would never get to the phone. And then when they come upstairs and tried to take me downstairs, I went and started chunking chairs in the dining room, because I knew I wasn't even chunking them at anybody. I was getting kicked out that night. I was done. And sure enough, they called a sitter who was armed to come sit with me, literally.
Wow.
And my parents were there. We only lived about 3 hours away, and my parents were there within 4 hours.
Now, were they mad when they picked you up?
Yeah, my mom struggled with me being there so much. I think it was a relief to her. She got really close with a dorm mom that protected me also. And so when that dorm mom left and she started saying how bad things were there, they were already planning on taking me home on my 6 month visit, which was 2 weeks later.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
So I left Happiness Hill. I went home for 2 weeks. My parents and I have always had a very turbulent relationship. My mom, I love her today. She's literally my best friend. But she, even herself, said she was not ready to be a mom, and she really never grew up. So, and then my dad was away with the military.
Sure.
So when I got home, it was a big deal of I had to be good that summer, or I wasn't going to be allowed back into the Christian school. So there was all this pressure on me, but also on my mother, because I had shamed everyone because I got kicked out of this place. So the dorm mom who I was so close with had went to Shenandoah Haven to work.
Okay.
And I actually chose to go to the Haven. I was only home for 2 weeks, and then I went to Shenandoah Haven in May of the Memorial Day weekend of 2000.
Okay.
Now, the Haven was portrayed to me as so much better than Happiness Hill. Because at Happiness Hill, we were not involved in a youth group. We did go to church services, but we could have no communication with anybody at church. At Shenandoah Haven, we were involved in a youth group. We did go to churches, and when we go to these churches and travel, we haven't touched on that, but it's been throughout different stories where they drug us across state lines to give
Mhm.
testimonies for financial gain.
Mhm.
But the difference between the Haven and the Hill was the Haven allowed us to do fun things that the churches provided. So this was presented more towards me as a summer camp type
Mhm.
experience than what I had just came out of.
Mhm.
And it truly was those first 6 months because dorm mom was there. And once again, I was protected. I came in the summertime. We traveled all over the country that summer. We did lots of fun things. We went to youth camp. Yeah, the paddle went with us at the Haven, and I heard girls get beat in a hotel room that year. I look back on that and think, oh my word, they had the audacity at a Holiday Inn to
Mhm.
literally beat girls. And when I say beat, I'm not talking about spanking, I'm talking about a large wooden paddle. And Kim Grubbs was the director's wife at that time. And I truly believe the woman was sadistic with the true meaning of sadistic.
Sure.
Because she would rear back as a baseball paddle and hit you as hard as she possibly could.
That's terrible.
And so that was my first experience of, uh-oh,
Yeah.
what have you gotten yourself into?
Mhm.
After I'd been there 6 months, the dorm mom found her freedom and she got married and she got out of the IFB because she had been taken from an AC school 2 days after graduation, basically, and shipped off to Happiness Hill to be a dorm mom.
So she was young as well.
Yes,
She was only what, 18?
yes. When she
Wow.
started at Happiness Hill. And I do want to be very cautious here. And she will tell you herself, um, if she ever had the opportunity to talk to people, that she did things wrong at Happiness Hill and she was part of the problem. She will tell you that she had favorites, and the girls who were not her favorites did suffer. So I want to be very careful. I do not want to paint her in a light that she was perfect, that she was there helping people and getting people out, and because that's not what she was, but she was a victim herself.
Sure. And did she ever come forward with what was going on to your parents or anybody that you know of?
I don't know because she was walking through her freedom herself. I know every girl that she has gotten in contact with that will allow her to, she's apologized to.
Oh,
But
that's
some of
good.
that's not enough. And I understand that not being enough because if Kim Grubbs come to me and apologize to me, I would tell her it wasn't accepted and probably had some very choice words for her.
Mhm.
And I understand that this lady did abuse girls because abusers abuse. And I want to be very careful there because I don't want to discount somebody's abuse.
Sure, sure. Absolutely. So when you were at Shenandoah Haven, at first you were having a good time, and then you went on this trip where, like you said, and this is another thing Roloff did, would basically take the girls around and put them up on the platform in churches, and they would recite Bible verses and tell, a lot of them would tell fake testimonies because
Oh,
they were just kids. They didn't do anything wrong. So they had to make up these testimonies about being drug addicts and everything. You had one of those?
yes, absolutely. Here's the thing, I was so naive. I didn't even know what sexual intercourse was. I didn't know how it worked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the
Yeah.
protected life I had lived at 14 years old. So I had to make up, I had one sip of beer. I had to make up how horrible I was and how I was sneaking out and how the cops had been called, but Shenandoah Haven saved my life and I
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
be alive if it wasn't for them. Yeah, because if not, what was I going to say? Oh, I had a sip of beer and my parents shipped me off.
Yeah.
Who's going
It
to
was
support
like,
that?
so did the leaders of Shenandoah Haven, did they encourage y'all to have these like more sensationalized testimonies, or was it almost like a competition between the girls? Like who had like the bigger story and
It
all
was a
that?
competition that was created by staff because the bigger the story, the more you gave testimony, the more privileges you seemed to have, and the more you
Wow.
were liked.
Oh,
So it was a competition, but it wasn't the girls creating the competition. It was absolutely the staff creating the competition.
wow, interesting. And so, for those who are listening who don't know how this works, they would take the girls to various churches, traveling, like you said, across state lines, and put them up on the stage or platform. And they would have them recite scripture, they would have them sing songs, and they would have them give testimony, and all that to basically promote this home for young teens, troubled teens, so that they could get offerings and support on a monthly basis, and
On
love
top
offerings and all that.
on top of what our parents were paying for us
Oh
to
yeah.
be there.
Which they don't tell that when
No,
they come to the
it's a
church.
ministry.
They don't tell that they are getting payments from the parents, that there's a tuition that's being paid. They do not say that to the churches. They act like, oh, we're a nonprofit. We don't make any money. Like the only way that we will ever be able to stay open and help these poor children find God is your support.
And not just find God, save their lives.
Yeah, save their life, find God, help them to get on the right path, all that stuff. It's so crazy.
And
It's just
also,
so crazy. The this is and this was all this whole thing, when you really boil it down to the inception of this whole thing, was Lester Roloff. He really created the template for this. It's really kind of crazy.
so Shenandoah Haven is the girls' home. Shenandoah also has a men's or a guys' home, boys' home that's been there, it's teenagers, since the 70s, I believe. And Lester Roloff, Steve Grubbs started the ranch in the Haven. Lester Roloff was one of his heroes, and he literally patterned the ranch after the Lester Roloff homes.
So Lester Roloff was his hero. And that's interesting because a lot of these guys who start these homes, they either were mentored by Lester Roloff or they were very much like obsessed with his work over there. And then they would start their own homes. But a lot of these guys, they would actually get land from the Lester Roloff enterprises and start these homes. I'd have to talk to one of our other friends that's a TTI survivor who's done a lot of research and connecting all of these dots to see if Shenandoah Haven is one of those properties that they kind of acquired from the roll-off enterprises. That would be interesting to find out.
Oh, I would love to know it,
Hmm.
honestly, but I know how big Lester Roloff was built up by Steve Grubbs. And Steve Grubbs was very young. These homes are being ran by very young people who have no experience, no training, formal training, except ministry in the church. How do they have a business working with troubled teenagers? They're young. They're just out of
Yeah.
high school. They're just starting their lives. And now they're being put in charge of, I think there was 13 beds at the Haven, 13 girls, and there was like 25 beds at the ranch.
Yeah, and I
That's a
have heard,
problem.
yeah, absolutely. And I have heard from other survivors that they found out that a lot of these people are being recruited at the Christian colleges like Hiles Anderson and those types of colleges, West Coast Baptist. They're recruiting them at the colleges to go and essentially be the leaders of these homes, like be the main people. And it's like they're kids themselves still. Like, how can they do that?
Exactly. So that is just one of the things that irks me.
Hmm.
Um, like Josh Grubbs, they want to talk about women and men being separated. Josh Grubbs was 21 years old when I got to the Haven. What business is a 21-year-old man and have working with 13-year-old teenage girls?
Oh,
Now, I do want to say that I never experienced any kind of inappropriate behavior between Josh. I don't want to paint that light. I did experience SA at Shenandoah, and I want to touch on this because it's important to me. It was by another church member who volunteered. That man had been brought down from Shawnee Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky, because he had been falsely accused of
okay,
sexual.
so he had an accusation at his church in Louisville, and then they shipped him to Shenandoah to work. This is what they do. They shuffle people around because they don't want to deal with the abuse within the church. They don't want to call law enforcement. They don't want to even believe it. So they're just like, oh, well, we'll just remove him to make the person or the family that this happened to, happy and get him out of here. But they put him in a different ministry. It happens all the time.
And I'm not sure if he was brought down to volunteer at the Haven. He was brought down to come to the church. I do know that. And I do know the church knew that he was falsely accused. Let me rephrase that. He was not
He,
falsely accused.
yeah.
He
He was accused, but they didn't believe it, or
Exactly.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
called it falsely accused.
sure.
But he started volunteering at the Haven. He was never on the Haven's payroll, to my knowledge. But he volunteered and he took a special liking to me. And so I was to go clean, hired, and I was not hired. I was sent to go clean his house every week. And yes, there was another girl with me, but still his wife was never there.
Wow.
So that's how he had the availability to me to be able to do anything.
Oh, wow.
And no, I never told anybody because it would just be another falsely accused statement. Because I remember hearing that he had been falsely accused. Like, this is information I found out later on in life. This is information that I knew as a teenager.
Wow. So then you were like, that definitely happened at his former church because now
Exactly.
he's doing it to me.
Exactly. And I don't know what happened or why they left Shenandoah. I do know that they did leave Shenandoah, and I don't know where they went from there.
Hmm. And do you know of anyone else that was essayed by him while they were still there?
I do, but she wants it to be done and over in the past.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not saying to name names at all. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, I'm wondering if that's the reason why they moved him out of there again.
And I wonder also, the girl who was with me went through it. So I do know that I wasn't the only one. I
Hmm.
don't know if it continued because he came in between my junior and senior year of high school.
Okay.
So he wasn't there my whole time because I was at Shenandoah Haven 3.5 years. I went in May of 2000, graduated in May of 2003, and then went to Hiles Anderson that summer semester. But I stayed at the Haven in between my
Hmm.
senior year of high school and my summer semester of college, and came back in between my freshman year of college and sophomore year of college.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because
So you,
I believed it. Shenandoah Haven did so much damage to me because I knew Happiness Hill was bullcrap because the abuse was so in your face at Happiness Hill.
Mm-hmm.
At Shenandoah Haven, I accepted it as my family. They made me hate my parents because my parents were not your typical IFB parents. My dad never was. And so they turned me against my parents.
Wow. All the while your parents are sending monthly checks.
Oh, my parents also gave them $25,000 when my mom got a lawsuit from a medication she was on because they wanted to tithe and wanted to do right by God because my mom had had it instilled in her. Mom left the church when she sent me off. And so she was not in church while I was at Shenandoah Haven ever.
But she was still paying tithe.
Yes, because it was instilled in her, kind of like I
I
told you
know.
when I was living in sin and I believed all these things still. So it was instilled in her. Yes, they gave a very large sum of money to the
Wow.
Haven. And
Ugh.
it was in between my junior and senior year of high school. I would like to back up a little bit, and I kind of skipped ahead between my junior and senior year of high school because my
Okay.
senior year of high school, I didn't want to be there. So between the time I got there in May of 2000 up until between my junior and senior year of high school, I had embraced the IFB belief. I had been turned against my parents. I wanted this family so bad that they set a picture up of. And that family is never obtainable, is what I learned. But
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it. I wanted the Bucks to be my parents.
Wow.
Yes, I was experiencing this abuse and these beatings and this restriction and not having access to my parents, but I believed all of it. And I believed that what they were doing was okay and in the will, not even just okay, the will of God, because the will of God is talked about so much and it's
Mm-hmm.
this magical, unattainable thing in the IFB.
That is true.
It took me so long to realize that the Haven was abusive. Like I was 30 years old before I realized the Haven was abusive because my standard of abuse was Happiness Hill. And the standard of abuse of Happiness Hill, it was so horrific abusive that I knew it was abusive. The
Mm-hmm.
Haven, I believed it and didn't realize it was abusive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were just in that cult mentality at the time. And so you were
Yeah.
blinded to it and you were able to rationalize it and excuse it.
And I was getting these feelings of fulfillment of a family that
Mm-hmm.
I had never really had because my father had been gone with military service so much. Because you're talking early 90s, Panama, Saudi, Bosnia, Iraq, early 2000s, got
Yeah.
sent off at 14. My dad was gone all the time, so I didn't have that sense of family.
Mm-hmm.
So the Haven became my family.
Hmm. So because of that, as you sit here today, is it hard for you to talk about a little bit?
It's
Or
hard
have
for
you?
me to publicly come out against the Buck and the Grubs. Let me rephrase that. It's hard for me to publicly come out about Josh Grubbs and the Bucks. Kim, I knew she was abusive. I knew she was not in it for the right reasons because the way she treated us. I believed that Josh and the Bucks loved me and had my best interest at heart. And I believed that until I was 30 years old. To the point when I was 34, I called Mitchell Buck I'm sick and I got sick at 34. I called him and had him pray with me. I almost went back into the IFB. I live in Colorado Springs now, in Colorado Springs, because the Bucks was here at his daughter and his son-in-law's church.
Okay.
So they were my family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started at 34, I started to really realize that I didn't want that. and started to break things down, my sickness made me realize a lot about God and what God is and what God's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I use a little lowercase g when I talk about God in these homes, because that's not the God who loves me today. And I went on my own spiritual journey of not believing, of agnostic, and then I found a God who loves me, but a God who does not judge. My views are nowhere near that of most Christians in this country at all. And I want to make myself clear when I say that. I don't want to be grouped in with a set of people that hate other people.
Absolutely. I hear you there. It's interesting to me when I left the IFB, I didn't want anything to do with God either. And, I did come back, not to the IFB, but just to God organically, because I started realizing that the IFB is not God. Like, you
No,
can't look at the way that you were raised in church and call that God, because it's the opposite of God. And hence why, the podcast is named Unholier, because really these people that set themselves up on a pedestal, the people that are holier than thou, so to speak, are actually unholier. And they are not Christ-like or godly or anything to do with it. They're the opposite of that. And so you're raised in that, and then you think of God as a certain like persona that isn't really who he is. And so I had to kind of come to that, realization myself, go through the deconstruction of it and everything. So would you call yourself a Christian now, or you don't even want to be like labeled as the same? Because the connotation of Christian that most people think of is a certain group of people, and you don't want to be like
I don't
related to
be
that, or
grouped. I don't want to be grouped in with most Christians, especially in this country right now.
yeah, no,
You
I
know,
hear that.
the
Yeah.
judgment that goes on and the hate that goes on because
Mhm.
people of different choices. I don't want to be grouped into that, but I do believe in God. I do believe in Jesus. A lot of people go, my husband is an educated atheist, is what I call him.
Okay.
And they question me, how can you be married to an atheist? Well, it's not hard. One, he is responsible for a lot of my beliefs today, because we met when I was agnostic and we talked a lot of things out, and he started educating me. And I'm going to jump back here to the education real quick, because my husband has educated me so much. The
Mhm.
science and the history that are taught in the IFB are not science and history, they're lies.
Right.
And I truly believed I was educated in these things. And my husband, patiently over the last 5.5 years, has taught me and taken me to scientific proof of things and taken me to the history book. And then I started digging into the history of the IFB.
Mm.
And that's when I discovered John Rice. That's when I discovered that we do not know. Oh, I am not part of we. I am so sorry. Let me correct that.
Yeah.
They do not, they go back so much further than what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and they teach this history that is just an absolute lie. John Rice, to me, is part of probably the founder of the IFB. It is my,
One of them, maybe, along with like a J. Frank Norris.
yes,
Yeah.
the same vein. And the history is a sad one. It's one of racism. It's one of
Truly.
oppression of women and
Absolutely.
oppression of children
Mm-hmm.
and breeding of abusers and hiding of abusers.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it in a nutshell. Thank you for saying that.
It's how I feel. And it's
Yeah.
what I've researched.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the IFB, they don't teach you these things. These are the founding fathers. They're the heroes. Oh,
Right.
another one, Hudson, Curtis Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
He, especially because Cleveland, the Haven is in Cleveland, Tennessee. Curtis Hudson was from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is only about 2 hours from Cleveland. So the Hudsons, Curtis and Tony, had a lot of influence into Shenandoah and the ministries, or what they call ministries at Shenandoah.
Sure. Sure. So once you deconstructed and then you came out of being agnostic and then you started believing again, was that, you said that your husband had something to do with that? And interestingly enough, it's interesting that you say he's an atheist and he was able to teach you a bunch of stuff. I have talked to many atheists on this journey, just even podcasting, and I find that most atheists know more about the Bible than most Christians do.
Absolutely. I've read the Bible through many a times. I went to Bible college. My husband's read the Bible more than I have before he was 18.
Wow.
Okay. He has read other books of different religions. And because he wanted to be educated, he wanted to make a decision for himself. My husband's parents did something right, and that was allowing him to find his belief system, and they supported that. But the conversations that my husband would have with me was, this is what I believe, but this is what I know Christians believe. Also, he would teach me that he knew others that believed in a God that was worth believing in, believed. I don't want to get into a bunch of religious things, but like how old the earth is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Scientifically,
Sure.
is not, the Bible is not, or what we consider the Bible, the King James Version. That's a whole nother ballgame.
That's the only Bible, Jessica. Remember, it's only one.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that there were different versions of the Bible. And maybe I should read them because I might be able to understand them.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with the King James Version if that's what you want to read, but it was forced down my throat to such a level, and I have so much of it memorized that I can't read it and retain it because I just quote it. Let me go there for a minute. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place.
Yeah, it's okay.
My history was so long with the IFB, with these homes, that there's a lot there. But they did something called Bible memorization. And I've listened to other podcasts and talked to other survivors, especially in IFB homes. This is very common practice. And it started with roll-offs. And basically, we sat in a circle for an hour every day of the week, but Sundays. And we quoted scripture where we could quote it for churches. We literally got up there and quoted a chapter in the book of James. The first summer I was there, what we had to learn in Bible Memo was the whole book of James. Kim gave us 2 mistakes. If we did not, we had to quote it to her individually. And if we made 2 mistakes, a mistake was misquoting a word or not pausing in punctuation that was there. The whole book of James. And I struggled with it so much because I struggle with memorization. I struggle with English. I have a diagnosed learning disability in English, which was never taken into consideration in any of these schools, whether it was the Christian school, Chilton Christian Academy, where I went from the church, or Shenandoah Haven or Happiness Hill. The learning disability was never treated. I did 4 years of English my senior year of high school.
Wow.
Because nobody kept up with our schooling and what we were actually doing. But anyhow, we'd sit in these circles, and The Handmaid's Tale, I watched it, and it was really hard for me to watch. And I would call my husband, I'd go, oh my God, they're doing this. And we did this at the Haven. And he goes, Jessica, The Handmaid's Tale studied the cult and wrote practices of the cult from it. And I'm not saying that the Haven was the Handmaid's Tale, but I'm saying that IFB is a cult. And a lot of people want to argue with that.
Absolutely. So when you hear a scripture that y'all had to memorize, does it trigger you? Does it trigger you though? Because you probably don't have like a positive connotation to it. It's probably more of a negative.
It's not triggering. It's almost numbing and comforting. James, the servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who had 12 tribes of sky, greeting my brethren. It numbs my mind.
Wow.
And I've talked to my therapist about this, and she thinks it's a dissociation trigger.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
because literally, like, I don't sit here and quote scriptures to numb my mind, but if I hear a scripture that's close to KJV, it's an automatic response.
Mm-hmm.
So I choose to read versions of the Bible that are very far away from the KJV because
Mm-hmm.
I want to receive from a loving God that I choose to believe in from scripture that doesn't numb my mind. And that
Wow.
is the IFB's fault. That
Mm-hmm.
is their fault that they
Mm-hmm.
use that scripture in such an abusive way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, take us back to Shenandoah Haven.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want people to know about Shenandoah Haven and your time there?
Oh, wow. Very controlling, very abusive. And I know those are very blanketed terms. They did restriction there, which was kind of like confinement, except you just couldn't talk to people. They didn't take away your clothes and give you a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Restriction normally came with SWATs, which is a nicer term for saying they're beating the heck out of you.
Mm-hmm.
They worked on a demerit system. Every Friday night was Friday family fun night. Normally you would have a fun meal that we didn't have through the week. You would watch a movie. We wasn't allowed any TV through the week. You would do a fun activity. But if you got a demerit, you had to write a chapter of the Bible, normally between 25 and 30 verses. And demerits were given for things like not cleaning your chart. Now, let me touch on this, especially in Kim's era at the Haven, because I was under Kim's era and the Bucks era. And Kim's era, she would come in and find things wrong with your chart. I'm talking about you just dusted every inch of that room, and there's a ceiling fan in the room, and she comes in and finds a speck of dust. Demerit. A little piece of paper that she watched someone drop on the floor. Demerit. Like she was a tyrant.
Wow.
She ruled with an iron fist, and it was going to be her way or no way. The abuse that Kim put on people, I can't even. First summer I was there, she pulled us all out of bed one time at 1 o'clock in the morning to yell and scream at us because she knew that we were lusting after her husband.
Oh my God.
Okay, Josh is this little short mousy looking dude.
Oh, wow. Wow. Sounds like she had some insecurities. Maybe he was like lusting after some of y'all and she was upset about it.
I
So,
don't
how old
know,
was
but like,
Kim?
how old was Kim? I think Kim was in her mid to late 20s when I came. She was a little bit older
She's
than Josh.
young, but she's still like there. Those are still young people.
Exactly. One time, we all, Kim, Josh, okay, first of all, Steve Grubbs is the founder. Kim and Josh is his son. Kim
Mhm.
is his daughter in law. The whole time I was at the Haven, it was a family business till the Bucks got there. And the
Mm,
Bucks might as well have been a family business because him and Steve went back. Mitchell Buck worked at the ranch when the ranch first opened.
okay.
So they went back to the 70s. So
Wow.
the Bucks might as well have been family. I mean, they were
Yeah.
right in that vein, but
Hmm.
it was a family business.
Wow.
His younger daughter, Jenny and her Jenny and Matt Franklin is her married name. And they were the directors of the Haven shortly after I left. I was never there with them because Jenny's only a year older than me.
Oh, wow.
Like I played basketball with Jenny. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And unfortunately, the stories I hear now from other survivors is Jenny changed. Jenny went into the same threshold,
Oh,
the same vein of abuse and the same form of control. And that makes me very sad because
hmm.
I knew Jenny as a different person. And I hate that she decided to go that way because she knew a different way.
Hmm. So there's still abuse going on at Shenandoah that you
Absolutely.
know of.
Absolutely. I know the home is still open. I know the home still has restrictions. I know the home is still controlling girls and controlling their mail. The mail is open, read. Any mail going out is read. They have the control to choose not to give you a letter if it comes in that they don't like what it says, or not send a letter out. When I graduated high school, I was handed a folder the day I left for college, and it had letters from my parents that I wasn't allowed to have, telling me that my cousin, who I was raised with as my sister, was pregnant
Oh
with
my
her first
gosh.
child.
Wow. So I'm surprised they even gave you those letters at all.
It
But
was the Bucks handed it to me. The Bucks were not happy with me when I went to college. I went away on a senior trip, a trip after I graduated high school, not my senior trip. I wasn't allowed to go on my senior trip because I was mourning the fact that my dad wasn't going to allow to be at my high school graduation. And I started acting out and started wanting more privileges to speak to my dad before he got deployed.
mm,
And Buck literally told me one night, go get a picture as I was crying in his office that I wanted to see my father, who had orders to go to an active military zone at that time. Now, I want to say that I believe my God blessed me. My dad was able to be at my high school graduation, but my senior trip got taken away from me. And I sold freaking donuts on my 18th birthday in downtown Chattanooga in the cold rain to get to go on that senior trip.
wow.
The crime never, the punishment never met the crime. The
Mhm.
punishment was always so much greater than the crime because they wanted to control you so much. They had to make the punishments that much greater.
When you're talking about them not allowing the kids there to write letters to their parents or filtering the mail, not letting the letters come to you, that sounds like prison. It just, to just call it straight up what I think it's when you're telling me this stuff, I'm like, this sounds like prison. Legitimate.
Prisoners have more rights than the kids do in these IFB homes. I can't speak for other troubled teen industries. Like, I've heard the stories; it lines up with cults. You know what I'm saying, and beliefs.
Yeah.
But I can only speak for the IFB, and
Right.
that's it's true. In these IFB homes, prisoners
Mhm.
have more rights.
Yeah, it is crazy. And y'all were just kids. I mean, that's the sad part. You missed out on the best like childhood days of your life.
You,
And
we did, but it taught me something that in any situation, it is what you make it. Because I have fun memories from there too. My closest friend is from Shenandoah to this day.
wow.
We talk every week. She comes out to my wedding. She was out here this 4th of July to see me because I haven't been able to travel because I've been so sick the past 2 years. We're talking about prison and these letters. While I was there, a girl ran away. She had been beat for 4 days in a row and she was black and blue. Kim had beat her.
Mm,
And she ran away and she told the cops about it. They saw her behind, they took pictures of her behind.
wow.
DHS came in, they interviewed all of us. We thought that they were going to shut the home down. And I want to add here that by that point, I was scared to go home. I believed in this place. I thought they were going to take my family away from me. Like, that's how much control these people had on me in my mind. The case disappeared. How does a government agency see pictures of somebody? I'm not talking about light bruises. I'm talking about black and blue, deep colored bruises that are killing at different stages because of how bad this girl has been beat. And they did not come in and remove us from these homes. They said it was because they did not have permission to question us from our parents and that nothing that we said could be used in the statements. That was what we
Wow.
were told.
Wow. That's crazy.
And I've heard from other survivors because at this point, there's a group of us that is, I'm the oldest. So I'm from the 2000 era, 2000 to 2005 is about when I was involved with Shenandoah. I left college in 2005 and haven't been back since. but groups from other eras of girls up till 2 years ago, where law enforcement has been called, law enforcement has been notified, and nothing is getting done about it.
It's interesting you say that too, because I know that there's several homes and survivors we've talked to in other homes that people would try to like run away and notify police or somebody in town, and they were all notified to bring them back and not do anything. And
Yeah.
so what we found out was the leaders of these homes were in cahoots with a lot of the law enforcement, and they would just line their pockets with some cash every now and then, just bring them back, don't question, don't say anything. And people don't want to believe that, but there are corrupt law enforcement officers and corrupt DHS people. I mean, if it's a small enough town, they might even all know each other, and some of them may even go to church together. So it's not far fetched to think that could be happening here.
And it's a history of it. If it was a one time incident, you could say, oh, this was just a bad DHS worker, but it's a
Mhm.
systematic issue, at least in Cleveland, Tennessee. I can speak to Cleveland, Tennessee, because they
Sure.
did not protect me. And
Mhm.
Cleveland is a very religious town. The Church of God has a big college there, Lee University. So it is a very conservative town. Now, the Shenandoah Baptist Church, the IFB church I was involved in there, is more conservative than Lee University is. I'm not saying anything negative about that college. I don't know. It's just Cleveland is a very conservative town, or it was in the early 2000s.
So, if you think the abuse is continuing, what would you have to say to people who are still in this system, who maybe feel like they can't get out, or there's no way to escape, or girls who are finally out but they just don't know what to do with this information that they maybe experienced abuse or saw abuse at Shenandoah Haven? Do you have anything to say to these other girls?
I do. We're fighting for you.
Uh,
I'm pretty sick. I go to Mayo Clinic the end of this month, and we're not sure what's going to come of that. I would not be sharing my story if the abuse was not still happening at Shenandoah. I have a friend who was there 2 years ago who has the same story that I have.
hmm.
So, at least as of 2 years ago, and from everything we can tell from the outside, it's still happening. The home is still operating the same way as it was. If you want out and you feel like you can't get in touch with me, I'm not going to tell you you have to leave. I'm going to tell you that we're here for you. And that's my message to anybody who has suffered any kind of abuse. And even if it's not the IFB, there are people out there, there are people that are fighting for you. We are getting some media attention with these troubled teen home industries. And the
Yeah.
more media attention we get, the more of these documentaries that come out, the more traction we get to shut down these homes. It seems like a lot of these homes now have fled to southern states because there is more of a refuge there. Shenandoah has always been in Cleveland, Tennessee, but I do know that, in years past, southern states have been a refuge, especially I'm from Alabama, and the state of Alabama was horrible being a refuge for these homes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all we can do is get together. All we can do is try to change the laws, especially the statute of limitations.
Yes.
It's not fair that I cannot come forward against the man who abused me, who essayed me, because I'm outside my statute of limitations. It's
Mhm.
not fair that I was beat black and blue, and it took me till I was 30 to realize that it was abuse because I was in a cult.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think it starts with us trying to form, get together, get our stories out there, being willing to be honest and vulnerable. And my hat is off to my friend who is 21, 22 years old, and she's coming out, because at 21 and 22, I didn't have the courage. I didn't even have the courage to look and realize that it was abuse. So I'm glad to see that the internet is happening because we can connect more quickly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there a place where other survivors can reach out to you?
Yeah, if you want to find me on Facebook, it's Jessica Juanita Pike. Email address is Riding on Balance, RIDINGOON, balance, BALANCE, @gmail.com. I am very responsive as long as I'm not dealing with my medical battles. I may tell you, I'm dealing with this right now. Can I get you connected with someone who could help you? Because there is a group that is forming of survivors, and I'm talking about survivors as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
that's coming up against this. And I think that it's going to take some time, but I think we're going to see legislation change.
Yes, I
It,
really truly hope so, because there really is a community that is growing every day of survivors, especially within the TTI space. And like Jessica said, you can reach out to her. You can also reach out to me at UnHolier and on our social medias, or reach out to me personally on my Facebook page. You can find, it's all connected. We're all connected, and let's get you guys some resources to get out of these places, or to get counseling, or to connect with other survivors, which can be the best therapy, even because once you find other survivors who have been through similar situations, that is like so validating. That can be like the best therapy sometimes.
a camaraderie is formed.
Yes.
And I do want to say this too to parents of teenagers that are struggling. There is help out there. There is good help out there. Please research and please make sure it is therapy based by a therapist who is certified, been to college, if you need help with your children, because things happen, especially in the world we're living in today. Teenagers are up a lot against a lot more than I ever was.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need help as a parent, reach out to your school counselor, reach out to a local therapist and see what they recommend. Do your research, get a handbook, ask the hard questions, ask, what is the certifications? Make sure the school is accredited through the state, not through a Christian association, because those accreditations are not valid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good advice. And I'm glad that you addressed the parents too, because if they're listening, I'm hoping that they'll really take what you say and think about it. And also, don't just take your pastor's word for it.
Yeah.
Do your own research. Go and visit these places before you decide to send your child off to them. Talk to some of the other kids that are there. Don't just take the adults that are working there, their word for it, because of course they're going to paint it in the best light. Watch the kids' body language. I think that's a big part, because a lot of them are groomed to say a certain line to people about the place that they're at. Oh, it's wonderful and blah blah blah, and we do this and we do that and it's great, and they're like little robots. But if you actually look at their body language when they don't think you're looking, that'll tell you everything you need to know. If it's abusive or oppressive in any way, you'll see it on their body language for sure.
And look for reviews online and dig deep.
Oh, that's a good one too. Well, Jessica, I really appreciate you coming on and having this conversation and just sharing your story, and giving really a warning to parents and other people who may not understand how bad these TTI homes can be. Whether they are, under the guise of Christianity, or they're just regular homes. You can see from a lot of these documentaries that have come out that they all kind of seem to have a pattern. And so if you are considering sending your child to one of these places, please do your research. Go there, check it out, talk to the individuals who are there, not just the staff members, to the children who are there too. And like I said before, watch their body language, because they may be trained to tell you a certain line or two, but to kind of just step back and see how they're acting, that's going to give you all the answers you need. So, Jessica, I really appreciate you. You are just so lovely and just a beautiful human being.
Well, thank you so much for having me and listening to my story.
Wait. Before you stop listening, I just have one thing to say. This is the boring part, guys. It's the legal jargon. Just wanted to make a disclaimer that anything you hear in this episode is all alleged. As you know, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Although we do believe victims and we support survivors and believe their stories, we do have to be careful with accusing people. Thank you so much for listening.